Good evening and welcome to Fortune India's Best CEO Awards yet again. And I really hope that you've been enjoying the evening sessions thoroughly. And now it's time to discuss about building future-ready conglomerates. And who better than Mr. Sanjiv Puri of ITC who can take us through this. So Mr. Puri has made it to the Best CEO list the second time. Last time, he was the best CEO in the diversified category. And this time, he's the best CEO in the FMCG category, which speaks volumes about a traditional company which has become FMCG's most respected company. So thank you, Mr. Puri. So you recently coined an acronym called TURN, which was all about navigating businesses through turbulence and uncertainty. It'll be interesting to hear from you as to how you would use this philosophy in taking forward your business in times where disruptions have become a way of life.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And yeah, you know, change, challenges, disturbances are the nature of business, society. That's how things change over time. But what is unique and different today is the scale, speed, and scope of things that are happening, challenges, change, etc. Because there are confluence of things that are coming together at one point of time. Starting with, we all know about the issues of geopolitics, geoeconomics, the tariffs, the supply chain issues. There's this climate change that has own challenges on food security, inflation, supply chain disturbances. There is this piece on technology. Of course, digital and AI is the most talked after, but that's not just the only technology. But that itself is changing very rapidly. By the time companies are thinking of finishing their POCs on AI and getting on to, trying to test out what Gen AI is, we're talking of agentic. Things are actually changing quite rapidly. And then on account of that, there are transformation in business models from an FMCG perspective. You see that the way a consumer consumes or buys products is changing. The e-commerce, the specialized stores, the whole landscape is changing. And the consumer, who is now armed with a lot of information today, his own aspirations have changed. Aspirations are very high. He wants a great tasting products, but he's become aware of what health means. So it must also have everything packed about health. He knows what the best product is like, so therefore he wants the best, but he also wants value with it, and so on and so forth. So there is a huge amount of change that is happening, and that's why we talk about in ITC about navigating the turn, turbulence, uncertainty, rapid change, and novel strategies. And given that it's the speed, scale, and scope of what is happening. So a lot more, distributed leadership, a lot more empowerment in any enterprise is required. I'm a great believer in vision, values, and vitality. So we really look about everybody being tightly aligned to a vision, but loosely coupled with the adequate resources and degrees of freedom and values as a guide rail. And what we have to do and what we are doing in what we call the ITC Next strategy, much of it is not new, but I think is the manner and the scale and speed with which some of these aspects have to be applied. So the first and foremost is for us has been about how do you make sure your portfolio remains contemporary? How do you make sure your portfolio is future ready? Because a lot is changing. And no more is it going to be merely the world of the mass markets. It's all about micro-segmentation. It's all about meeting specialized solutions for consumers. And we're doing this through a combination of inorganic and organic. Inorganic, for example, we bought Mother's Purse, which is a specialized natural baby care solutions provider. Internally, we launched something called Right Shift, which is a nutrition-dense product for 40 years and above for active lifestyles. So like that, lots more niches are going to emerge and lots more micro-segmentation will be required. And this requires, of course, if you want to do it, it requires a far larger commitment on R&D. It is not R&D to be done when you cite the opportunities. I think you have to be future facing. You have to take your bets in advance and create the platforms. Right Shift could not have been created if we had not invested in nutrition, for that matter. And I spoke about technology. Yeah, it's very important to be competitive. I mean, if you do not use digital, you're going to be obsolete very soon. And it's also leading to a lot of transformation in the way we work. When you do micro-segmentation, the supply chains that we have today are not going to deliver what is required for the future. So the whole thing has to be reconstructed using digital. And one more, I think, important facet I'll mention, and then I'll stop here. You know, typically we've designed supply chains for efficiency, market servicing. These are always the things. What is becoming more important today, or equally important, is the bit of resilience. Resilience on account of geopolitics, resilience on account of climate change. Few years back, you know, for example, the Rhine River, where much of logistics for industries in that belt happened, because of the warming, you know, the water levels fell and logistics couldn't happen. Right? So these are disruptions on account of many things that will happen. So how do you kind of design for your own, I mean, how do you make sure that you are climate proofing your infrastructure, and how do you make sure that your own supply chain is studied for climate risks, and how are you kind of de-risking that? So many more dimensions to strategy and execution are coming up. So that's really the piece we are working on.
Thank you. So when I look at your various businesses, one thing which strikes me is complexity. In the agri business, you're talking about from generic to proprietary. Again, you are talking about building cohorts, you're talking about micro-segmentation. So it's no longer a business which is a simple business which involves sourcing, manufacturing, and distribution. It's become far more complex. So what you tell yourself as a leader, you know, when it comes to managing such complexities?
So I think first of all, as far as managing is concerned, I think it's the solution really lies in empowerment, distributed leadership, you know, having creating synergies around of enterprise resources and assets while being completely aligned as far as vision and values is concerned. And really, you know, you have to, as an organization, I think the principle is that, are you really focused and obsessed with creating stakeholder value? If you're obsessed with creating that value, then you have to be ready, and you need the capacity to be adaptable. You need the capacity to change along with the circumstances. And to be able to manage the change, we need to invest in the capabilities that are important. So digital, for example, besides the strategy of organization, is a very important tool to manage complexity. So how are we invested in that? I think these are the kind of investing in the capabilities and being obsessed with the stakeholder and consumer value, and be flexible to be, you know, to be adaptable. And if I was to ask, and from my perspective as a leader, what do I look at in terms of what is important? I think for me it's very important to make sure that the organization has that environment where growth mindsets, entrepreneurial energy can flourish, where resources are available, where people are empowered, and where, you know, innovation is a way of life. These are the things that, you know, really I think about.
So ITC has recently demerged its hotel business. So how does this decision fit into your vision of building a future-ready conglomerate?
Well, you know, the strategy of organization emanates from the business strategy. And one of the principles of growth and diversification ITC has followed is leveraging institutional capabilities that resides in various parts of the businesses. And if I was to leave hotels for a side and talk about the largest FMCG sector, which is foods, so it's the enterprise strengths of cuisine expertise, of agri-sourcing, of distribution, and our traditional strengths of brand building, etc., that have come together to help us to create a very large FMCG business. So synergy is important. So from our perspective, I think we look at we look at the benefits of synergy and the benefits of being separate, and you look at the pros and cons and decide which is best at a point of time in the context of opportunity in the market, in the context of maturity and competitiveness of our businesses. So from that perspective, you see in the tourism industry, we realize that huge headroom to grow. The number of rooms per thousand in India is minuscule compared to global average, huge headroom to grow. And tourism is a very strong trend that is coming up. And the business had matured, it was competitive, and it was positioned well to grow on its own. That's why we kind of demerged it.
So I can see time's up. Just one last question. Had you not been heading a conglomerate like ITC, what is that? Is there any business which you would have dreamt of, which you would have loved to lead? Any industry that you would have loved to be in?
Well, I think I have spent nearly 4 decades in ITC, so there is nothing much I have done apart from being in ITC, so I can't really think beyond it. And ITC has exposed me to many of the sectors. So these are the sectors I enjoy, I thrive, and that's what fascinates me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puri. Thank you.